Hey there, good evening, happy Thursday. Tonight on the Connector Dots, I want to talk to you about being a big L or a little L. Now, if you're not sure what I'm talking about, then definitely join me in this conversation tonight to hear insights about leadership. So welcome to Connector Dots. These are some brief, candid insights for pharmovators and connectors for healthcare and pharmacy. I'm your host, Kimber Boothe, and I am a strategic pharmacy consultant and coach, and I help pharmacists to advance pharmacy practice through strategic advocacy for new roles and resources, and to support them having engaging, joyful careers. So this is Leadership Thursday for the Connector Dots, where we're going to cover leadership and career development topics. And today, I really want to talk about some of the fundamentals of leadership. So what and why leadership? I wanted to mention leadership versus management and what is the difference. People often get confused about that. And then I want to talk about big L versus little L. So that is what I started with, but we will end our conversation with that topic. Please go ahead and leave some notes in the chat, and I provided a way for you to connect with me later on. So when we look at the definitions of leadership, there's actually pretty boring definitions when I have looked them up. You know, it all reuses the word leadership. So it's like, what is it really? So one of my favorite definitions actually came from a pharmacy book by one of my prior professors, David Holdford, who wrote in his book, Leadership for Pharmacists, Facilitating Change in Pharmacy Practice. And he defined it as the process through which an individual attempts to intentionally influence another or group in order to accomplish a goal. So it's the influence that's such a key word to this. And even when we talk about management versus leadership, that will definitely come into play. So you'll see that, and I'm just double checking I'm on live here, so it's going through. So leadership, of course, there needs to be a purpose for what you're doing as a leader. You want to have a process for it. You want to be an intentional leader, but you just definitely want to remember it's about the people and not about the leader when you are a leader. And it's about people following you, but also you leading them from behind. So that's a definition I like. And the reason I think leadership is, so important is because we, in our profession of pharmacy and in healthcare, are going through so much change, and we all need to act as leaders. And that'll come up a little bit later in this conversation. We cannot handle the status quo, so we definitely need to be being bold and practicing, good leadership so that we can support change and be motivational, because change is happening whether we like it or not. So there was a quote, actually, I just recently put this on my Instagram account. It was a quote that I have read that says, if you want to build a ship, don't drum up people together to collect wood, and don't assign them tasks and work, but rather teach them to long for the endless immensity of the sea. So it's a long quote, but what I really like this when I had come across it, doing some research on leadership, is it's really, that's the whole factor of leadership, right? Versus management. You're not really focusing on the actual task. You're focused on the vision as a leader and setting that to help people be inspired. I, again, mentioned before that I think leadership is so important. And of course, in my program, Pharmovation, I talk a lot about innovation and pharmacy and why it's so important that we are being innovative in healthcare today. And leadership is critical. And I've also talked about the importance of intrapreneurship and having those entrepreneurial behaviors in our organizations. And we really need that to start with support from our leadership so that we don't create barriers, so that we support innovation, we support entrepreneurship, we support the change management and are driving innovation. And that we're also being effective leaders beyond the bounds of our pharmacy through collaboration with other healthcare professionals, other leaders within healthcare, because we are members of the overall healthcare team. And so I do talk about pharmacists a lot, but I've definitely worked and coached with other healthcare professionals and supported other services with growing their teams as well. And it's all a collaborative effort. I'm definitely a big fan of the role of pharmacists, of course, as the medication expert, but all of us in healthcare are trying to achieve the same goal. So now I want to talk about management versus leadership a little bit. So this is, you can see a lot of different charts and information out there. And so I'm going to share with you a few quotes and a few ways to differentiate it. But at the end of the day, what you're going to find is that in most roles, even as you move up, you're going to be doing some leadership and some management. So keep that in mind, and we'll talk about that. So leadership is working with goals and vision, while management is working with the objectives. So again, we think about that at the higher level. Leadership is about the goals and the vision, and management is the objectives, kind of getting the work done. So Russell Onroe mentioned that in a quote. And so here's a few other ways to think about it. So leadership is that we do the right things, and then management does things right. So whether we're doing the right things versus are we doing them right, that's a differentiation. Leadership tends to be more about leading people, whereas management tends to be more about managing resources, projects, or programs. Another quote that comes up often is a leader is more of a let's do it, like bringing people together, and management is more about go do it and more directive. And then the outcome of leadership tends to be that producing of change and movement and momentum, whereas management is producing order and consistency. So those are some ways to think about the difference. And so, go ahead and leave me a note in the chat if you're not driving. I know some of you join this on your drive home from work, depending on what time zone you're in. So if you can, leave me a message and in terms of how much time you think you spend on leadership versus management. And again, what tends to happen is I actually show in my course, I talk about it in two different triangles. So as you go up in leadership positions, the amount of your management does tend to decrease. So as you move up in higher increasing levels of responsibility, maybe more as a big L, we'll talk about that, you tend to give up some of the management and you're focusing more on that vision and setting the stage. But there's always probably going to be people you're managing. So I don't know of any position that you won't be doing any management, but it definitely becomes a lot less. Whereas as a manager, you should be doing a little bit of leadership too, for sure. And I'll talk about that as a little L and even big L roles, why that is so important. But you may be, especially in a frontline or first level leader, you may be doing more management time. So that's okay. But it's good to know both skills. Interesting research that I've looked at, not everybody is good at both. So you can have people that are more effective managers because of that structure and maybe not so good on the actual leadership skills. But most of these are competencies you can tend to learn for sure. And I know on a future sessions, I'll definitely want to talk about competency assessments. Yesterday, if you didn't catch it, we did talk about having a professional development plan, and definitely doing competency assessment is a key part of that. So you want to gain both management and leadership skills so that you're prepared for future opportunities. Now, what I want to mention here is, as I want to think more about the big L versus little L, is the reason why that is so important is that everybody needs to be practicing some leadership skills. Everybody. And Sarah White in Pharmacy has really talked about this, and also Wayne Termel has published on this topic of big L versus little L or small L. So what he said was that there are leaders, the small L's. These people just lead, regardless of their job title or positions. They are proactive, they lead by example, and step up when things need to be done or do the tough decisions that need to be made. So Wouldn't we all love to have people like this working on our teams, people who will step up? And that is important. I remember one time, it's interesting when I think back, there was a time where in a company we were getting ready to do our annual like performance review times, and there were like leadership behaviors and other values that of course are typical part of a performance review, right? You have your usually your goals for the year, you have maybe your job responsibilities, and then there's usually some behaviors or values for the company that you want to evaluate. And I remember somebody saying, well, our administrative assistants don't have to answer those questions. And I remember I had a conversation with the person, and I at that time spent more time looking into it. And I said, well, why wouldn't an administrative assistant have to uphold the values and some of these behaviors, one of which was, leadership. And, it definitely turns out that, especially when you think about this big L idea, which is leadership kind of at all levels, that everybody needs to be doing that. So of course, our administrative assistants, our pharmacy technicians, and everybody needs to be expressing and behaving in these ways. So one way, again, to think about it and bring it home. So a big L tends to be that formal title leader person where they're usually officially managing people. So that's more of an official HR term where you are the manager of people. You do their performance review. That tends to be who we think of as your big L's. But little L's can be like every pharmacist, every technician who's on the front lines. They are managing their work and leading their practice. That is the definition of a little L. And we want to support those team members. They are definitely making decisions regularly. And we know from a bigger perspective that nobody else is going to lead us through life. So we want to make sure people are stepping up. Doesn't mean there's not like a hierarchy of decision making. We can't have everybody going rogue, but people who step up and demonstrate these behaviors are stronger, and you want to support them on your team and help cultivate this in your other team members. So each of us is a leader, whether you like it or not. I know there's many folks that I've, mentored through the years or coached, and, it's fine. Like when you go to do your professional development plan, you may not want to be a big L. You may not want to be a big, C or D, or where you move up to be a director or a C-suite person. That may not be in your goals. Although, side note, I would encourage you to do that. We need leaders in healthcare and our profession, and pharmacists. We make great leaders. And so we need to tap you not only within pharmacy, but in solving all of our healthcare needs. So that's my little footnote for you guys. But it's okay if you don't want to be a big L, and you can still develop in other ways. So how can you develop more as a little L? So those are some of the topics that I wanted to, chat with you about today, about, what is leadership and why it is so important. So I want to invite you to, join me for these kind of discussions. Again, this was Leadership Thursday, where we'll talk about professional development topics. And so really hope you got something out of this, understanding, what leadership is, why it's important, management versus leadership, and how many times they are definitely interrelated throughout your daily activities. And then finally, appreciating this big L versus little L topic, that we all are leaders in our own ways. Tomorrow for Pharmovation Friday on Connector Dots, I'm actually going to be reviewing the blueprint for change from the Get the Medicines Right organization. And this is a great interdisciplinary organization that I've been getting more involved with because I think it's been a nice way to, again, have an interdisciplinary review of how we can improve our medication use processes. I also want to invite you to go to my website at kimberboothe.com/connect, and you can join my email list because I'm actually going to be providing members of my community the recordings of these connector dots in an online portal to make it easier. I know it's hard. Sometimes you catch these, sometimes you don't because it's within your social media feed. So I want to make it easier for people because people are definitely reaching out to me saying they appreciate listening in and getting these little brief connector dots. So again, great talking to you. I hope it's nice where you are. I definitely spoke the other day about sending my heartfelt, sincere, warmest prayers to everybody that is being impacted by some of the negativity and definitely the physical wildfires that are happening. So I hope you are safe. I hope your family is safe. Good night, and I will talk to you tomorrow. Bye-bye.